I'm wearing the flag of the Independence, by the way, the Firefly Independence.
So am I. I did revisit a little bit of Firefly for this.
Okay.
And all it does is make me want to get a beer with Nathan Fillion.
That's great.
I think he's probably one of my favorite people who's going to be all over this episode.
It makes me want to play dinosaurs with Alan Tudyk.
Well, we'll get into it. It's going to be a long show, but it makes me realize how grateful I am for all of the other projects I like these actors from.
That's very carefully worded.
It is very carefully worded. Ready? Hello, everyone, and welcome in. We are very excited. This is going to be a really fun episode. Oh, Autumn, are you coming to us live from the Firefly class ship? Because you're all fuzzy right now, but it's okay.
I thought you were. I don't know who is. Hey guys, who's got messed up video? That's what we want to know.
They're going to choose you. They always pick me. They always say it's me. Daniel, is it me or is it also Daniel is here? Daniel, let us know which one of us it is, and then whoever it is, kick the other person. Well, hello everyone, and welcome in. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Fandom Social Live. We've got a very special episode today. It's our first episode of something that we've been wanting to do literally since the beginning of Fandom Social. It is something that we are calling Fandom Focus, which is a series where we are exploring the fascinating world of fan bases, of fandoms, and the cultures that surround them, of course, from various shows, movies, TV, books, all kinds of stuff. We're going to delve into the dynamics, the architecture of these fandoms, their growth, influence, and of course, the rise, the reign, the fall of them. And boy, are we starting with I think with a good one that'll really set the bones. That'll really set the tempo for the rest of these, because
it's gonna be hard to top the peaks and valleys of this particular fandom, I think.
There are some interesting fandoms out there, and this is one we wanted to do, like we did with our very, very first episode, where we went into the mental health aspect behind the MCU and Thor, because it's a topic that we're relatively familiar with, and we can sort of shoehorn the Fandom Social of it all into this thing we're well versed in. And Autumn is our resident Whedonist. We can call it that.
Not anymore, but sure.
Fan
of the creations that his teams. Yes, Hellmouthian.
Yes, Autumn is our resident Hellmouth. Let's just say that. And this is going to be an interesting one, because this has been one of the most prolific fandoms that has sort of come under highlight as well as scrutiny, and we've sort of seen it all unfold. The glory age, the golden age, we should say, of fandoms, which I feel is between like 2011 and 2019. Like if you have
the internet fire under fandoms,
what fandom culture is, for all the good and bad. A lot of that can be contributed to 2011. A lot of the we've got Tumblr, we've got Facebook, Facebook groups, so much, and of course we've got traditional
YouTube chats, YouTube live stream chats.
Yeah. So, but before we do that, if you guys are here, say hi, welcome in. As always, this is not just us yelling at you. This is an interactive show, and we're going to have moments in this show where we definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. So if you're here, sound off, say hi, because once the ball gets rolling on this show, boy, me and Autumn had a cold, a pre-show production call just to chat about this, and we just went off for about 45 minutes, just off the cuff. And we have a script.
It's going to be really hard for me to keep it together, because I like to get on a soapbox. I'm a big fan of soapboxes, and for this particular whole concept, I have it's like a warehouse full of soapboxes for so many different reasons. So I'm going to try to rein it in, but I have many feelings about this topic today. So many feelings.
The topic that we are getting into For this particular episode, we're going to explore the rise and the fall of Joss Whedon's fandoms. Once celebrated as a progressive storyteller and feminist icon, Whedon built a very dedicated fan base through his work on iconic TV shows and movies. He gained this incredible cult-like status. But as we will talk about throughout the course of this episode, controversies around Whedon came to light and led to a complete reevaluation of his legacy and divided the fan base. So we're going to look at Whedon's creations, how they inspired a passionate community, and the ways in which the fans influenced his projects, propelled him, were part of the reason in which we are talking about this now and some of the downfall. And we have a lot to talk about. And I think before we get into this, Autumn, I wanted to talk about both of our relationships to the Whedonverse fandom up top, because I think because with anything with this, there's going to be
a level of the tone of
there's a level of subjectivity that you just cannot get away from this. Me and Autumn, Autumn's been around, as we'll see, for a while. I'll go first because I have much less to say. I didn't watch Buffy growing up. I didn't watch Firefly. I didn't watch Serenity. I didn't watch Angel. I did not watch Dollhouse. I didn't watch Much Ado About Nothing. And I didn't watch Dr. Horrible's sing-along vlog. I was not
You're a fan of one.
I was aware of Joss Whedon only from Dr. Horrible sing-along vlog because I was a huge fan of Felicia Day and the Guild. I was a huge fan of Neil Patrick Harris. He was already a couple years into How I Met Your Mother, which I had been watching since episode 1. So I checked this thing out and I was like, oh, this Joss Whedon guy is great. And then I worked at a little comic book store, and Joss Whedon and Buffy became my entire life because I had met Autumn. And then, of course, you get into a lot of his other projects. One of my favorite movies of all time that I've been very, very, very vocal about is a movie that he worked on, which is Cabin in the Woods. One of my favorite movies, one of my feel-good movies, believe it or not. From even on my very, very small corner of things, Joss Whedon's imprint is all over. So I have... But the things that have propelled him up into what we know him as, Autumn, you are much more familiar with.
Yeah. I'm going to try to make this as condensed as possible. So I discovered Buffy and was immediately a big fan, watched all that, watched all of Angel, watch them all again pretty much every year, maybe twice a year. Whenever I can, I'm getting people to watch the series with me from beginning to end. And that is how a certain 5'9" host at a place I used to work became a fan. We watched it together. And then I was super into it. I watched Firefly, I watched Dollhouse, all that. And I was so into Buffy that I actually, I started a website all about they call the Buffyverse and the Firefly fandoms, mostly focusing on the Buffyverse, which is Angel and Buffy. And it was called Whedonist. And it had blog posts. I made my own merch and sold it. I had like affiliate links all over the place. And I was super into it. I also taught a class called Buffy 101. I was the marketing director for WhedonCon. So all in. So that's where I'm coming from. Those are all my Buffy collectibles up there. Yep. I don't know if you can see it, but there's my Buffy prop replica, all in. Yeah. I think that sets the tone.
Yeah. And I will say when I was, how old was I? 19, maybe, when we first met. I was 19. And it was one of the most prominent attributes that I could talk about with Autumn, is that it was a thing you were a huge fan of. And I will say you're not that convincing because you have been trying for 10 years to get me to watch this show, and I've watched 7 episodes.
Because it's season 1, which is notoriously
it's hard
to get through.
But I have been going through Passion of the Nerd.
Had come out.
Yeah. But I did go through Passion of the Nerd a bit, and he's great. Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, would you mind dropping a link in the chats to the YouTube channel, The Passion of the Nerd? It's fantastic. Ian, the one who is The Passion of the Nerd, gives an extraordinary analysis of all of the episodes of Buffy, of Angel, of Firefly, and he really makes it come to life in terms of the philosophy, the mythology, the psychology of these shows, and shows what they really are. So even if you don't watch the show, as Paul watches on its own, he can attest to the fact that it stands on its own.
Right. You know what? I was just going to say, so Larson brings up a good question that me and Autumn are talking about. So why is Paul here again? One, my show. So one,
Yeah. So
two, I have always had a very, me and Autumn have always approached fandoms very differently.
yeah.
I am a jack of all
You're an
fandoms,
observer.
but a master of none. I am a true observer, and that's why I have friends in literally every single fandom. It's why I can go back and forth between hardcore music fandoms and then football and then Buffy, because I fit into all of these fandoms when I need to.
Yeah.
Never go all in. And Autumn's kind of the opposite in a way. Is when Autumn's really, really into something, you're all in on that thing.
All in. And I tend to pick that thing and I'm in forever. Like I don't love tons of things, but as you know by my Star Wars watch spreadsheet, my Marvel watch spreadsheet. Yeah, when I do choose something, I'm in all the way for life. So
yeah, and it's been an interesting it's been an interesting ride reevaluating Buffy and going through all these fandoms and seeing all these things that I haven't really dealt with in a long time, in a decade. And it's because, and the reason that I enjoy doing it is because I love the concept of fandoms. Pop culture chameleon is a good way of putting it, for sure.
Yes. And I think Larson's question I can answer. Like, I think that both points of view are really important to have a balanced conversation about these things, because my tendency would be to be in a bit of a bubble about how good or bad or impactful certain things are. Right. And Paul is able to bring that perspective, but I can bring the perspective of like a deep dive, like really giving an authenticity and the nuances of a fandom. So I think they're both really important points of view.
Right.
When we're discussing fandom.
Yeah, and you guys will see throughout the course of this show. So, with all that, of course, if you're here, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I want a couple of things, Autumn. We are now over 200 subs on YouTube, and we have over 300. We have 300 people in the group now. So,
world domination, man.
We're coming for you, Whedon. This is the show that takes them down.
We're coming for you, Jon Favreau.
You're next. Wait. We're just waiting for him to slip up. We've got the thumbnail ready. All right. So without further ado, let's get into this episode, because we cannot understand the fall and the controversy of all this without understanding Joss Whedon's early career, because whether you like it or not, he is all over pop culture, and he will be all over pop culture until we are no longer consuming pop culture because of a massive asteroid that does us the way of the dinosaurs. So in his early career, Joss Whedon began as a writer on Roseanne, and he moved out to Hollywood, and a show called Parenthood, which I had never seen. I had to look up for the show, but I also never knew that he earned an Academy Award nomination for working on Toy Story. Like,
he was the script doctor for that. Yeah.
What a really interesting way. Yeah. And it also years and years and years ago, the first time I ever heard the term script doctor was because that's what people call Joss Whedon in the industry. And it's what he's known for. And it's so funny, man, guys, we're going to have a lot of this. It's so funny. He rose to fame in Hollywood by being a script doctor. That's also inevitably what started that trajectory down once we hit 2017.
I have an interesting thing about Toy Story. Was one of the things that he brought to the table was making Buzz Lightyear unaware that he's a toy. That was Joss Whedon, so that he could add that. So he's really great at creating interesting characters and putting them together in interesting ways. So he was a great script doctor because he could take the character development up a notch and make people want to engage with the content. So there was that.
Yeah.
He's still
and he showed quite a skill for it. He's nominated for an Oscar. He gained a reputation in Hollywood for sharp dialogue, innovative storytelling, which eventually takes us to, we're gonna hit it pretty early on because there's a lot to talk about. But it takes us to 1992. The Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, where Whedon wrote the screenplay for the Buffy movie, but apparently the studio significantly changed it. Another thing that I just know through osmosis of being with Autumn, of like knowing who the hell Christy Swanson is, and I didn't even know that there was a Buffy movie until like 5 or 6 years ago. But it didn't do well. It didn't.
No, I mean,
It
some
didn't light up the
people love
world.
it. They love it because of Pee Wee Herman. They love it because of Paul Newman, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it has like some fun, and Donald Sutherland has some fun moments, but it's just one of those cheesy cult classics that doesn't really have a lot of merit, just kind of fun and silly.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so the movie, the script changed quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but eventually that script would have its own transition into a TV series, largely in part, which I didn't know about this until we were looking at it,
Uh-huh.
to Dolly Parton. Dolly, we
Yeah,
got to Dolly very early
yeah,
on in episode 1 of this, and apparently she funded a
yeah.
bit of this.
She she saw her production company saw the original script that he had written and said that they believed in that story and said, "Do you want to make that a TV show so you can really tell that story over a long period of time?" And he's like, "Heck yeah, I do." And so it was
Mm-hmm.
born. Thank you, Dolly.
Thank you,
Hmm.
Dolly.
Yeah.
And I do love the idea now that if she's ever in a room with Joss Whedon, she will crucify him.
Yeah. It's like, what
she
have you done? I
she's
gave
like,
you.
I want my goddamn money back with
Uh-huh.
interest. Do you understand me?
Can
The,
can I give a quick tangent, like a quick one? I'll try not to do this a lot. A cool thing that happened was when she was on the set, she found out that one of the female producers was not making as much as the male producer, so she cut a check for the difference personally.
hell
Just
yeah.
like, here you go. It's
That
awesome.
poor producer, she was just working 9 to 5 trying to make a living, and Dolly
Yep.
Parton came in.
Stumbled
So
out of bed.
but in its prominence, Buffy, again, to the larger population, is not known for the movie. It's known for
Mm-mm.
the incredibly successful, not financially, but
Mm-mm.
commercially, culturally successful Buffy the
Mm-hmm.
Vampire TV show, which ran from 1997 to 2003, which is, again, arguably Whedon's breakthrough project. And it
Oh
redefined
yeah.
the vampire genre. So much of what we know in Hollywood of the
Yeah.
vampire genre in like
Oh,
mainstream is due to him.
well, it also set the stage for like Supernatural and a bunch of other shows like that, where it set that pace where it's like there's an overall monster of the season
Right.
and then there's monsters of the week, and so like and also like the Supernatural show was a fan of Buffy, and they wove in a lot of characters and actors and stories from Buffy just as an homage, which was really fun.
Yeah, and it is it's a really, really interesting show. And again, something that brought
Hmm.
Buffy Summers as Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy Summers
Yeah.
to fame, and so many other people that were in that show. Again, which I'm being vague because we'll touch on all of
Right.
them
We
throughout the
gotta.
course of the show.
Yeah.
And we can't,
Yeah.
this will be a 3-hour show if we talk about everyone, and I just let Autumn rip. But
Yeah.
it is, again, it kind of goes without saying, but again, this is a milestone in
Hmm.
episodic TV and the way that
It's
it's
the kick.
told.
Yeah.
And remind me again, Autumn, how long was he the showrunner? I know we'll get into it, but he wrote and was a showrunner on this, not
Well,
the entirety of the time, right?
Well, he was definitely like the showrunner, but he was much more hands off starting the fourth season, because he did
Mm-hmm.
create Angel, the spinoff. So while he was very hands on the first season, he was spread a little thinner. Started Angel, then later on started Firefly while Angel was happening. So he definitely would
Right.
kick something off, leave it to other people to keep producing it, and then go to the next one, go to the next one. So he was technically the showrunner, but not really hands on after 3 years.
Right.
And the show
And
significantly changes in the fourth year. You can see the difference.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
doing again. Daniel and Autumn shouted them out earlier, but I've gotten through about 2.5 seasons, so now I'm just doing the Passion of the Nerd recaps of some of these
Yeah.
episodes, and I'm good, and I haven't gotten there yet, but
Yeah.
I'm very close to season 4, and you can see it,
Yeah.
like the quality goes up. That monster of the week, I can absolutely
Yeah.
see how so many people enjoyed this, because Joss Whedon, I feel early on, and again, and a multitude of other people, Autumn, which again, I know.
Oh, yeah.
And the fandom is taking the name back and giving credit to some of the other writers who worked on some of the favorite episodes.
Right.
But they did a really good job of understanding that marketing ideal of like treat every episode like it's someone's first episode. And again, I don't mean to do this to all of you guys. I don't like to do this to you guys every time, but I was 4 when the show started. So it missed the boat. Okay. I didn't get it. But when when Supernatural started in 2005, it started in 2005. I didn't start watching until 2006. I really appreciated that about season 2. I was just like, I didn't get the chance to sit down all the time, but I would sit down at my grandma's and I would watch it, and I would, you know, follow along the best that I
25. Anyway,
old
go
lady.
I my big girl TV that I owned myself.
But I was like, but Supernatural hit me at 13. That's when I started watching.
Perfect.
It was 13.
Perfect
so,
timing.
you know, if you shift that back and you think about all of these people who were watching Buffy at, you know, for like Autumn, like you in your early 20s, or they were 16, or whenever it caught you, and you could just jump in at any time, you can understand immediately how that show works. So to say that this show set the blueprint for a lot of TV that we would start to see is really just is an understatement.
Yeah. We're going to have to, this is going to be so hard. We got to move forward.
And again,
I have so many things to say, but I won't.
We have Angel, which again is another incredibly prominent show. It's a Buffy spinoff. It expanded the Buffy verse, and it was a bit darker. I've seen 1 or 2 episodes of Angel. I missed, again, most of it. None of this really got me, but
Passion of the Nerd will get you there again.
Yeah, he goes through all of it. And again, the reason we don't want to yada yada over a lot of this, but this show is not about the shows, the media. It's about the fandoms which have been inspired by it. So, but you do need to know what they are to understand why they were inspired. And then of course,
the fandom kind of laid that groundwork. It wasn't, you know, I wouldn't say it would be a phenomenal fandom, but it's just kind of, there's the foundation, and then we'll get into when it takes off.
Yeah, and then you get into Firefly, which was, you know, it started in 2002. Short-lived. It was a space western which developed a very, I would say passionate is an understatement, but that's the word that's in the script. So we're going to go with that. And it led to the creation of the feature film Serenity. Now, me and Autumn were talking about this earlier, and I think this is the appropriate time to bring this up. That Buffy the Vampire Slayer is really when the creative side of Joss Whedon, I think, really comes to the forefront, and people
where he made a name.
Right. Where like Joss Whedon, the person, is a little bit more Joss Whedon, the artist. Okay, we'll call it what it is.
To the public and not just the industry.
Right. But Firefly is when Joss Whedon, the brand, Joss Whedon, the idol, I think that's where we get the catalyst for all that, which we will get into, but it's just something to remember about how he had 3 shows running at the same time that he was either writing on, producing, directing, which would be, I believe it was 2002, which is where the crossovers were. And he had them on multiple networks. He had Buffy, he had Firefly, and he had Angel. So, I mean, this guy was at the top of his game so early on. Were you catching, I know we've got, Jesus Christ, we're already 22 minutes in. Did you?
There's so much to talk about.
Did you watch a lot of this, Autumn, like live, like episode to episode, like sit down?
I was like a couple of years behind. So like I didn't discover Buffy when it first came on. I was all into Dawson's Creek, and I thought Buffy was some weird lame show based on a movie. So no, thank you. But then when the DVDs came out, like a couple of years after I was all in with the DVDs. And so in Firefly, I was telling Daniel, like somebody told me, oh, this show you perfect for you. You're going to love it. And so it took me like 5 years to finally watch it. And then when I watched it, I was kicking myself for waiting so long. I couldn't believe I'd waited, because it's amazing. So I wasn't in real time. I was a few years behind each one. So
and it'll be interesting. Also, if Autumn can do tangents, I can do one. If anyone out there has seen I Saw the TV Glow, it is like that is like a really interesting epilogue to this entire thing, because it's sort of like this pseudo fascination, obsession with this late TV show that people think is for kids, but it's got all these incredible themes, and it's basically just Buffy is sort of what they're talking about, and how, you know, people find it incredibly interesting, but you have to be weary of the creator, and it's a whole thing. I Saw the TV Glow, which is a new A24 neon film out there. Autumn, I think you would watch it. I think you should watch it. So. It's pretty good. Anyways, we need to move on.
Getting back to Firefly. So the reason why Firefly suddenly is what. No, I'm saying the reason why it suddenly catapulted was it only lasted 13 episodes. It got canceled. People who loved it was still a small audience because of the way Fox treated it, but they loved it with such an intense passion that when the DVDs came out, not only were they buying the box set for themselves, or it's actually just two, whatever, they're buying for themselves, they're buying multiple copies and giving them to everyone they knew. And I was on the receiving end of that. That's how I discovered it. Was my brother had seen it from someone else telling him about it. And he's like, I bought it for you. You have to watch it. And so that is how, which is an amazing way for a fandom to be created. It was all people being like evangelists of this show that no one had ever heard of.
It's a good way of putting it.
And it was just a DVD set. And so almost no one saw it on TV. Almost no one. 90% of the people who have seen it watched it on the DVD.
Yeah.
And it became this intense, and that is what kind of rose it to this like mythology rather than just like, oh, it's a TV show, I like it, the end. It's like you discovered it, someone gave it to you, you had a personal connection, and like you felt like you were in some special club. And that's when people started worshiping Joss Whedon, as opposed to just liking the show.
And I think it's which we'll move into. We are going to be referencing a fan-made documentary that was created called Done the Impossible, which is about Firefly and the inevitable creation and production of Serenity. And I think that is a really good microcosm of what the Whedon fandom is. And it doesn't cover Buffy at all. That's what Autumn's here for. But it really kind of put me in the headspace of how dedicated, how loyal they were to the material, how
intense and how activated, like
how intense. And and that's where I started to get really like into this again, because this just reminded me of all of the people, Autumn, that we would work with whenever they would come into the conference, because we would host these events, and they were diehard browncoats, or they were diehard Slayers, like, and it was just an entirely different world. And that is going to be so important to understand, again, the rise and fall of Whedon and his many fandoms. So
and what happened with that, you know, we talked about the Serenity being made. I'm going to quickly go over why it was so unique that it got made. The fact that the internet wasn't that big of a thing, social media wasn't that big of a thing, and the success of the DVD sales, the DVDs just the sales skyrocketing for this TV show that barely anybody saw. Fox executives saw that. And more importantly, the fan base, who was just on little forums and message boards, they were flooding Fox with letters, like sending emails and sending handwritten letters demanding more. And so for a canceled TV show to get greenlit to make a movie to complete the story was I don't know of another example where that happened to that degree, and based on no social media really being a thing.
And
again, incredible thing.
So moving into the idea of these fandoms, you know, they largely communicated, like Autumn said, on all of these, we'll call it sanctioned blogs or these sanctioned areas that was it Fox that set it up? It was Fox, right?
Well, before Fox even did that, there were just forums that people created, and then like official places were made and bigger names were made, but creating their own little spaces.
Right. And again, so many of them,
did I disappear?
You know, again, for the oh, there you go. You back? Yeah, you've been kind of cutting in and out, but it's okay. It makes you mysterious. Just tell everyone to stop using the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You're like, Mommy's got to take down Joss Whedon right now.
Come on.
Come on. So, you know, and then I think one of the most prevalent areas for a lot of these fans to communicate would be traveling to these various conventions. Of course, we're talking Comic-Con, we're talking New York Comic-Con. I found it really interesting that a lot of the brown coats in that documentary, you know, is they would go to things called shindigs. And this was very early on in the fandoms. I found this to be so important to the level of trust that a lot of these fans had in these internet usernames. There's a woman who was talking about, like, I only know you as Roxy and Butterfly, and we're talking to each other, you know, in public, and like that largely doesn't happen anymore because you can't really. I mean, you can. I understand.
naive time. Like it was an innocent time of the internet
Right.
for the most part. Yeah.
And a woman even jokes
Like
like
she's
she's
yeah.
talking to her brothers, and she's like, this is the address I'm going to, and they're like, you're gonna get killed with an axe. And it's like it's so true, but they were such devoted fans and they participated in these forums so prominently, specifically for Firefly. I don't have a lot of information. Autumn will have the information on Buffy, but it was a little different. Like Firefly is really when you see Joss Whedon and his fans activate. Like that's what we're trying to get across.
They mobilized.
Is with Buffy
100%.
the Vampire Slayer, we really see people gravitating towards the material. But as we were saying a little earlier, with Firefly and Serenity, you really start to see that the artist comes before the art. And that becomes really important to, again, the architecture of this fandom. And so once, Firefly again premiering in 2002, but once we get the fans starting to mobilize, they express, they do like letter writing campaigns. They're all over these various sites. It is massive. And then eventually, because of the impact of the fandom, the movie is greenlit and Joss Whedon comes on. And again, I know we're going to do our best not to like just bag on Joss Whedon all the time, but I think it's just something about looking at that human garbage pail kid for so long that really just bothers me. Is like in that documentary. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Looks like someone dropped a lollipop in a barbershop.
He's a hairy potato.
He is. Yes. Like even his hair divorced him. There are so many moments in that where he does the thing that's like, I'm sorry, Autumn, but it's so Gen X when he's just like, yeah, when the movie was announced, fans were angry. Oh, wait, no, what's that word? Oh, yeah, they were happy. And I'm like, I understand that that's part of his personality, but it's so annoying. And if Joss Whedon was not, well, I hate to use canceled, but if he was not suffering the repercussions of his actions, would I still be annoyed? I think I would, because it's like such low hanging fruit.
It's such a playing something really straight when you actually mean the opposite, and then thinking you're clever for doing it. It's like, it is a very Gen X thing to do. I mean, no Gen Xers that I know ever do that.
No, not one. I don't do a show with two of them.
No.
No.
So bad. Anyway.
Yeah. So,
we got to stay on track.
I know. Once we get to 2002, the fan efforts of the DVD sales convinced Universal Pictures to greenlight Serenity. In 2005, it's released, providing closure for a lot of the storylines. And that's really where Joss Whedon, this figurehead of all of, this fandom, of all of these people's goals and their actions, they're successful. They win. They considered themselves, ironically, like part of the brown coat. They're this scrappy group of people trying to make something happen. And honestly, in that sense, it makes sense. Like, it's beautiful. It was great. And I love how, we were talking about this, Autumn, and how, so many people were like, it was great in Joss's vision. And then the entire time, I'm like, well, Universal saw the money that was going to be made. It was something about the DVD sales, right?
Yeah. It was all about the DVD sales. I mean, it was all those fan letters and everything, but the DVD sales, seeing that how many DVDs were sold from a failed TV show failed. So like, that's what did it. I mean, I think we could talk about this all day. We definitely need to move on, because we can just say that that's where Joss Whedon, the icon, was born, where the fandom for him as a person was born.
Yes.
And fans started to idolize him to a level of beyond, celebrity.
Yeah, that's a great picture, Daniel. Thank you. Yeah, that's like him is like like a deity almost. And I remember I've been going to Comic-Con for a decade, and anytime he was there, it was a huge deal, because he is like a fan. He is like unfortunately, like, if we had this conversation in 2016, people would put him in the Mount Rushmore of pop culture icons. Like
Yeah.
they would have. They just
Right.
would have. Because he
Yeah.
had mainstream, outside of Buffy, outside of Firefly, there was a lot of passion projects that he was able to complete because of this level of
His status. Yeah.
of his status. Yes, thank you.
And his fans would follow him to whatever he wanted to do. When he did Cabin in the Woods, they followed him there. It's the only horror movie that I've watched and really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like, I love that movie. They followed him to the webisodes for Dr. Horrible. They followed him to Much Ado About Nothing, to do Shakespeare. They followed him wherever he went. So when the announcement came out about Avengers, everybody lost their collective minds. Absolutely just went bananas. And so I think that leads us to like that next phase of his status.
And we'll call this the peak of fandom.
Yeah.
This is when they're soaring on angel's wing, where what is it? They're up on angel's wings where eagles cry, or whatever that dumbass song's lyrics
up
were.
On a mountain high. Yes.
Up on a mountain high where eagles cry, or whatever.
Well, because it merged the Whedon fandom with the Marvel fandom.
Right.
And then they were like an unstoppable fandom force.
Right. Yeah. It's got like it's mixing the mommy fandom, which is, I would call Buffy, right? And it was the only thing came close to the daddy. Well, a daddy fandom, I think, would be
and the mommy fandom and a daddy fandom love each other very
much. Honestly, though, I'm wrong. I think daddy fandom would be Star Wars. So, but I was gonna say, no. Well, that's a whole conversation for another day. Let us know who's the daddy fandom in pop culture. But again, let's just move on. But we get to the peak of Joss Whedon and his fandoms again with Marvel. So with Whedon's work from 2012 to 15 with the Avengers, and then we get Age of Ultron as well as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. These were massive with audiences, and they brought really the Joss Whedon effect to the main stage. Because
so then he was a mainstream star as opposed to this cult worship star. He was like mainstream name.
Right. And with anything, right? It's like when you've got like a band, right? Like Kings of Leon or something. You're like, I've been following them since they had like their EP, and now everyone loves them.
Oh, it's way back. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure, like, did that exist, Autumn? Like, I mean, let's be real. Let's cut the cameras. Cut the cameras.
I don't think,
did that exist with you at all? Where you were just like,
no, I think that because of the Whedon's fandom's tendency to evangelize and to try to get more people to watch Buffy and to watch Firefly, people were excited when more people would join. So that fandom in particular was so excited. The more people knew about him and the more people watched his stuff, there was no gatekeeping. It was the opposite. It was like, we want more. We want more fans. We want more community. Because of that was the nature of the Firefly and Buffy effect. We were trying to get more people to watch. So
right.
Yeah, so it was no gatekeeping at all, for the most part.
And it was, which is, I think, an important pillar of the Buffy fandom. Because again, as someone, pop culture chameleon, I'm going to steal that. Thank you, whoever said that. I have always been around Buffy fans. And I've always, either whether it be with Autumn, right, or our 5'9" friend, like, it is a all-encompassing fandom because there's so much of it. But it's never gatekeeping.
Think about the difference between someone reacting to, oh, I've never watched Buffy versus I've never watched Star Wars. Buffy's like, oh, you have to watch it. And Star Wars is like, you've never watched Star Wars? It's like a disdain that you haven't, as opposed to like a Buffy or a Firefly, like, oh, you got to watch it. You got to come watch it. You'll love it. No one says you have to watch Star Wars. You'll love it. Like, it sucks. I love it.
And I think there's a couple of comments here that I want to bring up from people that I think are important. Because this will get you into the headspace. Little bit of Joss Whedon. Laura Keela says, there was a shirt in the Star Wars font that said, Joss Whedon is my master now. And I am assuming that master is a play on Buffy, right? Because of the master.
Well, also the master, like in Star Wars, Anakin calls him master, and whenever the Padawans. So and there were lots of similar T-shirts of people idolizing and saying, basically he was like a Jesus-like figure in a lot of these slogans and a lot of these. There was also a funny one that said, "Guns don't kill people, Joss Whedon kills people," because of his proclivity for killing off loved favorite characters. Like he would just kill them to like really get you in the gut, and so he was a big mass murderer of favorite characters.
Rest in peace, Quicksilver.
Yeah, rest in peace, Wash.
So I Wash, yeah. And so, you know, like Steve here says, Firefly fans turned me off of his stuff. And I can understand that because that was such an active hive of literally busy bees who were doing everything that they could in any way that they could to go and get this show either restarted or get the movie made. There was a woman talking about in the documentary how she would take these handmade stickers and go to her local Walmart and just put, you should be watching Firefly stickers on everything.
On the displays. Yeah.
On displays all the time. And that level of marketing like is just not seen.
We need to jump to the next, because we could talk about Firefly fans and all of that, but we definitely need to move into, let's start going on the other side of that peak. Like he was doing all the Marvel stuff and he was getting greenlit, like he was in demand for everyone to do everything. And then 2017 came along.
And then 2017, so we get you know, due to all of these obsessive fandom communities, the online platforms, social media groups, Joss Whedon became this incredibly important person in so many people's lives. As we've just demonstrated, he is in charge. He was the purpose for marriages, for friendships, for so much purpose in people's lives that once we get into the controversies and the downfall of Joss Whedon, it really stung that much more. And all of this really started for Joss Whedon in 2017.
Can I take this summary really quick? I don't know if I'm cutting out, but I want to say in 2000, I'm going to run through this really quick because we could go off forever, but I'll give you the highlights. 2017, when he was at the peak of his stardom, his ex-wife, Kai Cole, posted a blog post talking about how misogynistic and abusive and just what a toxic person he is. And that was right when the Me Too movement was really getting started and creating a big movement. And most Whedon fans brushed that off as a bitter ex-wife. They were not ready to believe that because he was one of his biggest, what he was known for was being a feminist icon. And he was constantly talking about feminism. And one of his favorite things to say at conventions and in interviews was, I'm often asked by interviewers, why do you write such strong women? And I reply, because you keep asking that question, which implies he's saying until strong women is not a concept any more than a strong man. Blah, blah, blah. But he would bring it up himself. I just want to let you know. He would tell people that. So the idea that he was somehow a misogynist was not acceptable to fans who worshipped him. So with a few exceptions, they basically brushed it off. And then 2018, Ray Fisher, who was Cyborg on Justice League, spoke up about the behavior that he dealt with on set. And again, a lot of fans were skeptical. And like they understood it, that he was not lying, but they just kind of brushed it under the rug. And a lot of people took it as these people jumping on the Me Too bandwagon, especially Ray Fisher. He was accused of trying to get some fame, trying to get some attention by jumping on that bandwagon. And so it's still, for a few years, nobody really worried about it. And then in 2021, which is several years of people still being okay with Joss Whedon, Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia Chase on Buffy and on Angel, came forward and talked about the behavior that she experienced by him, which was incredibly toxic, incredibly abusive. I'm not going to get into all of it, but one of them I will say, when she was pregnant on Angel, he was very angry with her for keeping it, mocked her religious beliefs. It was pretty bad. So we're going to move forward with that. And I'm not going to get into it, but it was very, very bad. And almost immediately, Sarah Michelle Gellar posted, within a few days or a week, posted a very carefully worded social media post that basically said, she exactly said, I want to get the words right, I stand with all survivors of abuse and I'm proud of them for speaking out. And the timing of her saying that, while she didn't name names, made it extremely clear that she was backing up Charisma Carpenter. And that opened up the floodgates, because I want to say, with fans of the Joss Whedon specific fandom, not just Marvel, but the Whedon verses, Buffy, Sarah Michelle Gellar is equal to Joss Whedon.
Right. Yeah.
It's basically equal. And Nathan, it's like Joss Whedon and Buffy and Nathan Fillion all up at the top and everyone else below. So for her to greenlight this concept of him as a misogynist or toxic,
it was
problematic.
It was so important.
It opened the
for the movement.
floodgates. Yeah. And then like Amber Benson, Michelle, all of these other people that worked with him, they all felt safe enough then to come out. And that it was Sarah Michelle Gellar. But more importantly, the fans who were not ready to believe it because of how much they worshipped him. When Buffy said so, the fans were like, we believe her more than we believe you. And so that was, I'm going to sum that up. That's what happened.
Yeah. So that is really where we find the decline of Joss Whedon. And there are so many other elements, and there are so many other things that
so many stories
that he's done. People are still talking about it today. But that's really the gist of it. That's really sort of the culmination of all of these efforts. All of this God, this godlike mentality that he'd had, because he came in and he had created arguably one of the most successful projects in the history of movies, of the Avengers. He tied all of these threads in. He didn't cook the pieces individually, but he plated it perfectly. And then Age of Ultron is what it is, but it's a little Whedon-esque still. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, again, this is just more of the same, where he has this pattern of taking these things and script doctoring them, as Autumn was mentioning. So once he has that inflated ego, and he has got this personality of basically, I can do whatever we want. I can do whatever I want. He is brought in again pretty early on in the process to replace Zack Snyder. Again, if you're not familiar with it, if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with this, but if you're not, I'll sum this part up pretty quickly. He was brought in to replace Zack Snyder after Zack Snyder had a terrible family tragedy. Zack Snyder was about, I'd say, 80% done with the Justice League movie, which is a culmination of all of these individual superhero movies. Very different, obviously, but still, it's a little different. That again in 2017, the failure of that movie mixed with everything that Autumn is just talking about, all those allegations, is really where it is rock bottom for Joss Whedon. Not, to point out, Sarah Michelle Gellar, 2021, she came out and said all this stuff. That was also the last time he'd had any sort of creative property that was out, which was The Nevers, which ran for about 12 episodes, and it was buried. It was buried with underneath everything.
When he lost his fan support, like that was everything. And I think that really, in my opinion, is that really emboldened the Justice League Zack Snyder situation. It's not that he had the power to keep a Snyder cut away, but I think with his empire crumbling, they were able to say, we're gonna let Snyder have his cut, which would invigorate the movie again. It would get more people watching. It would bring in more money, bring in more eyeballs. And so it was really their fandom's lack of support, like their pulling of their support for Whedon, that I think was the catalyst for the Snyder cut, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah. It was the opposite effect, and them seeing this other group of mobilized fans of, they're sort of the antithesis of the Whedonverse fans and the Snyderverse fans, sort of replacing what they had thought had happened. And once they had replaced in, and this new fandom stepped in, which again, on the show, we'll probably get to the Snyderverse fans, but once they stepped in, they were done with Joss. They didn't need him anymore.
Yeah.
Now, everything he had done had become moot at that point.
Yeah. And I think we talked about the fact that The Nevers quickly was taken right back off the air. And Paul and I mentioned before about it kind of didn't matter how good or bad the show was. Anything that had his name on it at that point in time was going to fail, because fans were not here for it. The same fans who were going to follow him anywhere to do anything before were outraged at his treatment of these actors that they loved so much, and they were done with him. So for the most part, it was the fans that changed his career trajectory forever based on his actions. So Nevers, again, might have been a great show, but it didn't matter.
The Nevers is just an indication of when Joss Whedon will be working in Hollywood again.
Someone's over a sense of their own power can change the world.
Yep. So we don't want to end this on a terribly negative note because this
No.
is, again, a show about the fandom. But again, this is just a very interesting case because you cannot distance the Whedonverse fans without Joss Whedon. But let's talk a little bit about where these fandoms find themselves today. You know, we've gone through a little bit of their initial reactions, a lot of their coping mechanisms. But today, go ahead.
I do think we need to talk about that coping mechanism a little bit. I'll touch on it quickly, but I do think everybody's familiar, I think, with the concept of separating art from the artist. When an artist does something that's reprehensible or that we don't like, you have to decide, are you still going to like the art? And I think the Whedon fans had a huge struggle with that because they loved him so much, and because the things he did were in direct opposition was for the reason that they loved him so much. Him being a feminist icon and then turning out to be a misogynist was really hard to figure out how to metabolize that. And so one of the ways that the fandom, including myself, dealt with that was by focusing on the other people who made these properties so successful, with the writers and the producers on these shows, like David Fury, like Jane Espinosa, like all of these people who were incredibly talented, Marty Noxon. They became showrunners and people started knowing their names and following them. And I think that's what really helped, because they know that no man is an island. He can't do everything by himself. He had to have these talented people. Drew Goddard, Cabin in the Woods, he did his shows, he ran his shows. So that's one of the main ways that the fandom was able to recover, is by shifting their fandom. It's never going to be as passionate and as intense as it was for Joss, but they still loved the things. And, doing events that, like, for instance, WhedonCon for years was called WhedonCon, and now it's called Hellmouth Con, because they still wanted to celebrate the work, but not Joss Whedon. So, Hellmouth Con just happened. I used to be very heavily involved with WhedonCon, and I think the fandom is still alive and well. The social media, they're quieter because there are fans who still support him. So social media can get a little divisive and a little tense. But for the most part, people have shifted. They don't talk about Whedon anymore unless they're, scrutinizing his behavior. So it's shifted, but it's still there.
Or doing a live show every Thursday, 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're here. So, again, we've sort of talked about Joss Whedon's early career, the peak of this fandom around, let's call it like the Marvelification of his career. And I've gone a little bit over the allegations and what sort of sunk that ship. But again, the fandom itself is still around. They are still, again, as Autumn mentioned, they're still doing Hellmouth Con. They're still very, very active on multiple forums, various communities, but it has diminished. It is without saying that it has diminished in popularity. It was very, they had this unified support. It's seen a decline in its overall size and enthusiasm, but it's still around, Autumn. And I think that is something that I think is important about this fandom, is that they are incredibly resilient. I think that same energy,
we recovered.
That same passion that they'd had to get something like Serenity made. Because let's be honest, without the fans, Joss Whedon's, we talked about this bookend, right, Autumn, that without his fans, the rise of Joss Whedon would not have happened. I mean, that goes without saying, but they really did play a very unique role in that rise. And to the opposite end of that, the fall of Joss Whedon is largely in part due to his fans taking a stance and falling back on the material that they loved and not this deity that they had objectified for a while.
I want to specify that, like, when we're talking about bookends, there were these two incredibly unique things that happened in Hollywood that, while they may have happened elsewhere, it's incredibly rare that both happened around Joss Whedon, and they both happened specifically because of fans and not because of his efforts, but because of the fans. And that one of them was getting a movie, Serenity, made from a failed TV show based on nothing but DVD sales and forums. And then the other one is getting a massive movie, a huge blockbuster style movie,
height of his career, possibly
height of his career, getting that remade and recut by a different director because the fans' reactions to him enabled that to happen. And I do think that both of those things are incredibly unique, and they're the perfect bookends for his rise and fall. Everything before the Serenity, he was just like, it was a low level cool thing, and everything after, no one cares, and he can't. Anything he touches is gonna turn to dust. like Buffy vamps. He staked his own career. But you do have to say
the stakes have always been higher.
I mean, he's definitely a unique creator with a unique career trajectory, to say the least, and his fans have been almost entirely responsible for all of that. I mean, more so than I think some other. I think Star Trek stands out in that same category. Yeah. Star Trek's fandom has really made incredible changes to the Star Trek content, and really invigorated that. But I think that the Whedon fans have really controlled his career in a way that not a lot of other fan bases have.
And I would say, so kind of, and again, that about does it, everyone, but, sort of in complete summary of everything. The journey of Joss Whedon's fandom is a reminder that all these creators play a significant role in everything that we do. It's the fans. It's everyone out there of everything that you're a fandom that you're a part of, that sustain and evolve the community. So by focusing on inclusivity, accountability, shared values, activism, these things that Joss Whedon propelled on the surface, these fandoms actually do the work. They actually
he was
believe
performative
in
about it. They acted on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just an incredible first start to one of these episodes that shows exactly how fandoms can survive. And I want to end this whole thing on a quote that Joss Whedon has said. This is going to be the last time that we really, I give him a credit for anything, but I think the irony of this quote, it sums up the entirety of his career, and it'll sum up this show. And it's very quick. Remember to always be yourself, unless you suck. All right, that was it.
Yeah. Oh, that was I don't know, it was quite a thing to examine. I think me as a fan, like I said, I had a blog that was called Whedonist, and boy, howdy, did I take that down, because celebrating Whedon was not a thing I wanted to support anymore after all of this stuff came out. And I was one of the fans that was hesitant to believe that he wasn't what he said he was. And it took me till Sarah Michelle Gellar to read, okay, it's true. So yeah.
So everyone, thank you all so much for joining us on Fandom Focus. Again, we discussed the rise and the fall of Joss Whedon and his fans. We've got a lot of these that we've got planned, because there are so many fandoms out there that we really want to study and get in depth with. We've got a lot of other plans for these type of episodes, but this one was one we really wanted to do up front, because we cut back a lot.
Well, that was one of the most dynamic fandom, stories. You know what I mean? A lot of other fandoms, it's like they build and build and build, and they do great things. But this one was really up and down. So we know what we're going to be covering in the future, but I'm really curious as to what you guys would like to see, what fandoms specifically, not the properties, but the fandoms that you guys want us to cover. Like, comment that, in the comments below, put it in the Facebook group, because we're interested to see your perspectives on fandoms that you think are iconic in their own right.
Yeah, because again, as you mentioned, I'm this little chameleon. I can go in, my little bow tie and my my sonic screwdriver. I can go in, and we can study Doctor Who, or I can call you guys all idiots, and we can talk Supernatural. We can talk the Cincinnati Bengals. We could talk football.
And
Autumn will love that one.
For me, I'll say it's either, it's fine, or here's a spreadsheet. That's all. Those are my only two options.
Yeah, no kidding. So again, everyone, thank you all so much for joining us. We've got we tried really hard to get it out of here under an hour, and I'm pretty proud of us.
I think we did.
We did
We're
okay.
So close.
Yeah, we had so much that we could have talked about. But again, thank you guys all so much. Again, Rise and Fall of Joss Whedon and his fan base. Next week, we've got episode 5. Is it 5 of the top 75 movie songs of all time?
I think we should do all of them in the last episode. Let's do the top 30.
Oh, just real casual. You just want to do 30 and just do one long mega episode. It's going to be a 2-hour episode.
Yes, for sure. But don't you think it's like 4th of July's after that? We're all going to take a break from that and we can come back and do different things. But I think we should just have a mega episode and do all the rest of the songs. Countdown from whatever.
What do you guys think?
Up from 30 to 1.
I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna scream. Do you guys just want to do all of them? You guys want to get all? I think we are. We're getting pretty close. Daniel, come on, go on screen.
I think it's like 31 to 0. I think that's where 31 to 1. I think that's where we're at.
I want to say we're in the 30s. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. So it takes us an hour and 15 minutes to do 10 to 11 songs. So we'll do 30 in 2 hours.
And 100%. The reminder that the songs coming up are going to be good.
Yeah. Are the bangers because it's the top 31.
There's going to be so many. I'm telling you right now that we're going to look at and be like, skip that I just do not care about. So
it'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Steve Nora wants to know if we do all of them, can we start earlier? I mean, I'm good with that. We'll talk, but I'm good with that. Let's start now.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we can't. That's a lot of work for Daniel, not for us. We just show up. Daniel does all the work. But. And we'll figure it out, but maybe we do all that.
We'll post,
There's another angry elf that we've got to get on board for this. So
yes. He's like, wait, you said what?
Yeah, we agreed to doing 30 songs. You know the thing we've been doing.
I will be there for 1 hour and then I'm leaving.
Just tune in the last half. Geez. All right. Well, thank you all so much again. If it's your first time watching. Guys. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell.
And we are your fandom. Big fans of yours.
You know everything that we were talking about with not idolizing people that you're a fan of? We're the exception. You can look at us like gods.
I was about to say there's no danger of that ever happening with us.
No. Definitely go ahead and treat us like gods. So have a great night, guys. We'll see you next week. We'll be in the group. Again, you can find us on Fandom Social. Still waiting on some of the giveaway stuff, but we did promise we're going to do 2 giveaways now on our YouTube channel for hitting over 200, and in the group we're doing 300. So with that being said, everyone, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Like what you love what you like, and remember to always be yourself. Unless you're an asshat named Joss Whedon.
Don't
bye, everyone. Don't be that guy.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.